So, about a year ago, my alma mater high school had a call for volunteers to come and be career mentors to the kids in the school. So when I received this, I was very excited. I immediately wrote and I said, I started a school and I'd love to talk to anybody who's interested in going into education. I knew that my high school had many professionals graduating, doctors, lawyers, but I knew that there were relatively few people who went into education, so I thought I was going to be a hot commodity. And so I waited for the reply, and I waited. And finally I thought, I better write in. So I wrote in and said, hey, when do you want me to come and talk to these kids? And the reply came back and said, Dear Karin, thank you so much for supporting our program. We are so sorry, but nobody's interested in going into your field. Maybe next year. So I was just crushed, I was just dying to inspire some bright-eyed young person with how great it was to work in education. And, that's why I'm here today to talk to you. But seriously, I really love what I do. I really love my job. And, I didn't always do this. And I think the best thing that ever happened to me was to start a school for young children. And why is it I love it so much? It's really hard work, it's consuming work, but we have the rare opportunity, the rare privilege to touch children at very early stages in life. And hopefully the work that we do will lead to people like what Dan was talking about when he was driving around in the car, people who could create things in one day with very simple things. So it's a real privilege. And when I was looking at starting my school, the obvious thing that I would have done is just look back into my experience and say, hey, how was I educated? I could just do the same thing, and especially if it worked for me. And you know what? It really worked for me, actually. So I grew up as a Eurasian in Hong Kong, and at that time I knew many Eurasian kids, friends of mine. And one difference between their families and mine was that, we grew up with a very strong Chinese heritage. So yeah, I really considered myself completely Chinese. I would take a shower at night instead of the morning, which is what Chinese people do, right? So, I was one of very few Eurasians who actually went to a conventional Chinese school in Hong Kong. And it really worked well for me. I really loved homework. I was the homework girl. I would go home every day and, I'd love to finish it because it just made me feel so good. And I was very motivated by grades. I had great memory, good concentration, so I was able to do very well. It was a very smooth path for me. Close to graduation, I became head girl of my school, and before it, I was on my way to Stanford University, which was really my dream, actually. So while I was in university, this formula continued to work. Every task that I was given, I just nailed it, perfected it, turned it in, got a really good GPA, and then finally got what was considered a good job. I went into management consulting. So around the time of my graduation, the world was actually going through immense change. In early 1989, I did an overseas study program in Berlin. And I studied about the Cold War, and I actually lived and breathed it within the confines of the Berlin Wall. 6 months later, the wall came down, and the world was a completely different place. Soon after I entered into the workplace, we saw the dawn of the internet revolution. And I could see that this new technology was making big changes in the way we worked and in the way we're going to live our lives. And it was feeling very close to me. I didn't work in technology, but I was working in the Bay Area. And all these people I knew were joining this movement. One of my classmates at Stanford started the first internet portal. My boss in my first job left management consulting to go and start China's biggest online recruiting website. And then I went to my second job, which was in finance, and the guy sitting down the road from me from sales and trading also left his job, and he founded China's largest travel agent online. And around this time, I really started to develop a passion for education. And I looked into it, and it struck me as I look around that the world was really, really changing. But when I looked at classrooms, it was really funny because the classrooms looked very similar to the classrooms of my time, particularly in the primary schools area. So as I saw all these people I knew making great changes, making it easier for people to, buy an airline ticket or find the best job, I sort of pondered and I thought, well, what can I do? What can I do with my passion in education and contribute to all this new era? And as I thought about it, I thought, what I would do was I would go and start a school for young children, for kindergarten and primary children, a school that would be different, a school that would really prepare the children for the future that was going to be so uncertain and which so many changes were happening. The most watched TED Talk in history is the one by Sir Ken Robinson, where he talks about how schools kill creativity. In it, he says that creativity is the cornerstone of education, and he argues that all children are actually born creative, but they get educated out of creativity. My school has been running for 12 years. Let me tell you one thing. My school doesn't kill creativity. Not only do we not kill creativity, we also don't kill many other qualities that are so important for the children as they grow up to be adults, and that, like creativity, they are born with. And these qualities include things like motivation, things like flexibility, the ability to take risk, and curiosity. And how do we do it? Why does it work? Well, in our school, the learning environment is totally attuned to the nature of the child. We honor what is inherent in them, and we follow certain natural principles that allow the learning to be so powerful. And today what I'd like to do is share with you a few of these principles, a few of the ways of how we do things that really work in education for young children. And as I was listening to the talks this morning, I thought, wow, a number of people have also talked about these things and, stolen my lines, if you will. But at the same time, for example, as I listened to Ryan, I thought, well, we're doing what he's talking about. So hopefully, our kids will be like him. But let me start with, the first thing. The first principle that we follow is one size does not fit all. Right? Schools these days still follow the graded system. We still have set expectations by grade, and we use those expectations to classify children as successful and unsuccessful. Why are we doing that? We know that is not how it works. We know that children have different developmental needs, that they learn at different pace, and that they construct their own knowledge in their own way. So education does need to tailor to the individual. If a child gets on a computer today and he has to take a test online or do an exercise, what happens? The questions that are fed to him change according to how he's answered the previous questions. So if an online program can do this, why can't schools, right? Why can't schools come away from the constraint of curriculum by age and really focus onto the child? And how can we do it? We can do it by removing the criteria of age and bringing children together into a multi-age learning environment. Why does that work? Why does a multi-age environment allow you to focus on the individual? Well, if a teacher walks into a multi-age classroom, she can't really say, well, I'm going to teach this curriculum to these kids and that curriculum to those kids. She has to look at all the kids and think about what each one of them needs. She can set very high expectations, but they will be appropriate for the child, and they will be at his cusp of learning, so that we're really challenging each child at their potential. We see it working beautifully in our school all the time. In our multi-age classrooms, children don't have any constraints to their learning. If they're doing very well in a particular area, like they're a math genius, they will be learning math at that level. But at the same time, we'll be playing and interacting with children who are their social age. The same thing happens if they need a little bit more time to grasp something. So you're allowing children to really become the leaders in their classroom, or you're giving role models to all the other children to follow. And through this, you see the children really developing a lot of confidence and a lot of balance in their lives. And balance is really what we're looking for as we want the children to grow older. The other part of, fitting each child and the individual is that we need to be able to celebrate their individual talents. As an early educator, my greatest fear is that, Mozart walks into my school and nobody knows he's Mozart, that nobody has nurtured that, or worse still, suppressed it. So when we have, see this in our school, it's really our job to nurture it. And the way that it works well is, simply by the fact that in a multi-age classroom, the teacher stays with the child for a long time. In our school, they stay with 3 years. So there's really an intimate knowledge and bond that's built between the teacher and the child. And they really know them and can support them in all their pursuits. The next thing that we think a lot about is motivation. The motivation, as Ryan said, is intrinsic. It has to come from within. We cannot get children to be motivated, but we can produce learning environments that help them continue to flourish in this intrinsic motivation. The first way to do it is to give them autonomy. So in our school, when a child walks into a classroom, the first thing that the teacher asks him is, "Hey, good morning, Jack. What would you like to do today?" And Jack might be 3 years old, but Jack knows that given certain guidelines, he can go and choose what he wants to do. And because Jack has made his own choice, he's very engaged, he's motivated to get it done, and he really owns that knowledge. And so giving the children the autonomy to control and direct their learning is what we strive to do every day, and it results in them being motivated. The other thing to keep children motivated is you need to make sure that they feel competent. So I have 2 girls, and my older daughter is quite an athlete. She loves all sports, but in particular, she loves swimming. And as an 8-year-old, she has to train 4 times a week. And I am constantly amazed at the motivation that she brings to her swimming, because it's very hard, and she will go no matter how she feels, if she's tired or she's not even very well. And as I look at her, I know, firstly, the motivation doesn't come from the fact that swimming is interesting, because swimming is probably the most boring sport you can find. It also doesn't come from the fact that she's looking for results, because you swim for hundreds of hours just to shave a fraction of a second from your time. It comes from the fact that she's competent, and she feels it, and it makes her feel good, and she gives her confidence. I mean, of course you could say to me, well, what if she's not competent? What if my kids are not competent? Well, all kids are competent in something, and we as schools need to make sure that we focus on that in our communication, that we look at that rather than always telling a child what they could be doing better. So last week, I said to my daughter, I said, wow, you're swimming so well, you're so fit. I wish I could be as fit as you. And you know what she said to me? She said, but Mom, you don't push yourself. And I love it that she knows. I love it. She knows she's doing it for herself, and that the motivation for it comes from within. And the last thought I'd like to leave you with today is that education is a process. It's a joyful, natural journey for the children. It is not a means to an end. It is an end in and of itself. Often we forget this because we think that we educate our children to get them from point A to point B. And what's point B? Point B is getting into one of the top universities. Well, let me tell you something. When I went to Stanford, they took 1 out of 5 applicants. This year, Stanford took 1 out of 20. In another 20 years, who knows what the odds will be. So unless you're Ryan Lee, forget it, right? But because we are all chasing this lottery ticket, We're doing all kinds of things to education and the process. We're having children being drilled all the time with no time for creative exploration. We've got children pre-learning the curriculum in the summer before so that they already know the stuff and can ace the test. I don't think any of us here think that's a good idea, right? But because of the pressure and the anxiety, we do this. We kill the joy of learning, and we also create a generation of children who think they are failures when in fact they were very well educated. So what we need to do is come back to the aim of education. Education is not for achieving results and the best grades. It is for facilitating the development of each child. We must resist the urge to go for the grades. We must protect the learning. I had a little boy called Jonathan in my school, and he was 7 years old. And he came to our school from a conventional system. And after 1 month of being in our school, he said, "In my old school, they taught me how to do my homework. Here, they teach me how to learn." Between kindergarten and secondary, children spend close to 15,000 hours in schools. It's the most precious time of their life, and it is our job to make sure that that time is used wisely. You know, we hold the future of these children's children's future in our hands, and what we do does have immense impact on them. So, if we can embrace the learning process, if we can allow each child to experience it in their own individual way, and if we can encourage all children to pursue their passion of the moment, we will make their lives better now and for the rest of their lives. And going back to what Steve said, the people who wanted to make a difference, Bill Gates, Larry Smith, if we want to make a difference, that's what we have to do. We don't have to be them. We can do that, and we can help make the world a better place. Thank you.